Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is a local pitmaster and Orlando native, bringing a Cuban twist to Texas-style barbecue. Please welcome Derek Pierson, the owner of Bien Fuegos BBQ. What's going on, man?
Nothing much, brother. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having lunch with me. As my usual go-to question is, what's your go-to lunch or sandwich? And obviously, I know you have Bien Fuegos, so I'm gonna make it very easy for me, so you don't plug. I want you to plug like a Bien Fuegos sandwich, but then I also want to plug, like, if you're not eating your own stuff or telling other people about your own stuff, what is it that you would eat?
All right, so going with my sandwiches, gotta go with the OG Cuban. It's something I've been eating for a long time. Something I've taken time to perfect, or at least get to the flavors that I like and desire in the Cuban. My brisket's always good too, so those are pretty close, but gotta go with the OG.
Okay.
To answer your second question, I'm usually one of those, I guess you could say, like, seasonal guys, and right now Publix Nashville chicken hot is pretty solid for $4, dude. So I've been tearing those up.
All right, so let's start. I'm going to ask a question about that, because when you get that, have you had, I don't know if you saw a video. I did a video on it because I had it. It is very good. However, I would probably, my suggestion to people talking about the Publix Nashville hot chicken sandwich is, I like it. The problem is, by the time my wife gets it, my wife bought it, and I'm literally
Mhm.
like 3 miles from Publix. By the time I got home, the bottom bun was so saturated that it
Right.
was like it was like you couldn't really technically eat it. It was like I almost would be like, my suggestion to everyone was, it's delicious. Buy the chicken like that, and then buy a loaf of the King's Hawaiian and just make your own at home, because but obviously that takes away from
Yeah.
the way of doing it.
That,
But yeah, like, that was my problem, was it was difficult for me to eat it and be able to actually enjoy it.
I'm probably gonna have to steal that tip because, to be honest with you, I don't mind it being a little soggy on the bottom there.
Yeah.
It's just messy foods are the best foods to me.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes when they sit there a little too long, I feel like the
Mm-hmm.
bottom bun kind of dries out and it gets a
And
little
that's
tough as well.
Yeah, that's
But
the
the
big
chicken is
problem.
not bad.
That's the big problem that they've talked about. I've talked to some of the deli manager there. Obviously, I would talk to a deli manager.
Mhm.
I talked to the deli manager there, and I asked them that, and they said that that's one of their biggest issues, is that because even when they make their chicken sandwiches, that bottom bun, because of the heater, does it, and it
Right.
toasts it too much, and then you have too much of a hard bun. But who cares about that? I don't care about the public stuff.
Yeah,
I
we could
care
debate
about the
that all
Bien
day.
Fuego stuff. So tell folks about, like, what got you into wanting to start Bien Fuegos barbecue. Like, how did you learn to barbecue? Kind of give me a little bit of that origin story.
All right. So, going back in the day, my grandmother had a bar. I was kind of always around food in general with family. Um, I tried to do the college stuff and didn't really work out for me. I'm not somebody that's really regimented like that. Not really. I don't like getting up early. I got into pharmacy for a little while. I'm still doing that currently until this can, pay the bills.
Yeah.
But always been really into food. I've always been a really good eater. Um, I wanted to do something that I enjoyed. I don't want to go to work and feel like work is
Working.
work. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you do something you enjoy, like the old cliche saying, you don't work a day if you enjoy what you do. So back in 2016, I bought my first smoker. It wasn't anything special. It was just a $200 char griller smoker, offset. Um, Started learning on that. Uh, the meat was definitely not up to par as it is now. You learn a lot of different things throughout the years, and looking back on it, I definitely don't regret it, and definitely have learned a lot just
Where did
watching videos and
I was
reading
gonna
books
ask, like,
and
how did you kind of get to that point? Like, was it like videos, or what were you kind of doing, and how did you learn? And then what made you decide to go to
Mhm.
Texas style barbecue?
um. So let me start with the content. Uh, Basically, I started with books. Franklin. A lot of people start with the Franklin barbecue. I started branching out and buying other styles like competition style barbecue. Just kind of learn what these guys do. And then in the last couple years, YouTube's really taken off. So there's a lot of different YouTube channels you can go to. Um, there's a guy named Jerby. He does a barbecue channel. He runs part owner of Goldie's Barbecue out there in Texas, which is the number one spot here last year. And so yeah, you learn a lot through other people's experiences, things that they say, and then really learn it through experience yourself. So my first couple briskets, they weren't all that. They were pretty tough. They were kind of lame, but you keep at it. You keep at it. You figure out how to get better at it, what you don't like about it, and how to fix that. Going back to how I got into the Texas style of barbecue is due to the style of smoker. Growing up, my uncle had the old school style offset smoker. So, when I see that, that's stuck in my head for ages. And when I finally got an opportunity to get one, I was dead set on getting one of those styles. So if you're going to use that style of smoker, you gotta learn Texas style barbecue. And I definitely don't regret it, man, because the wood, the extra work, it really does pay off. It might be just a couple percentages better than some of the other style smokers, but you're gonna get it's worth it. You'll taste the difference. You get that extra smoke from the live fire, something that you're not really gonna get from most pellets or gas. Not to bash any one other style, but
Yeah, it's your
that's
preference.
yeah, exactly.
So you start that was kind of like in 2016. What kind of where did it how did it kind of evolve to the point where you were ready to go like, you know what? I'm ready to like start serving to people and doing a pop-up. And then what made you decide to go like, yeah, I kind of want to do this and I kind of want to make this into a business and actually start popping up everywhere.
So for like most people, I started cooking at home for friends, family members, toiling around, taking leftover meat, making Cuban sandwiches, or just trying to experiment in general. Um, I would say after my first 3 years or so, I started feeling more confident in it, and that's when I started getting the idea of like, hey, maybe I could do this for full time, make something out of this. So um, I wasn't really ready to get into the business side, but having waited around for 2 3 years, I had to make the dive. You're
Yeah.
not gonna know everything going into something fresh. So I've definitely learned a lot over the last couple of years. I've improved my craft, become a little bit more business acumen, which I still have a long way to go on that too. But you learn as you go, and you try not to dig too deep of a ditch. I guess.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So like what made you go let's first go with the Bien Fuegos barbecue name. Like what made you come up with that
Mhm.
name? And kind of talk a little bit about that out of curiosity.
So originally, I was going to name it Cienfuegos. I'm sure you know, being Cuban, the little town down there south of Cuba. And just over time, playing with fire, and the name just kind of changed, and it started to grow on me. And so that's kind of where the birth of Bien Fuegos came from.
I like that. I like that. And then what at what point like did you once you did that obviously like how does that so kind of like right now currently let's kind of talk a little bit of like if so let's let's back up a little bit just because obviously I know who you are and therefore that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you but I you're currently right now doing it as a pop-up. You're popping up everywhere around town making different all different types of sandwiches and all different types of you know different sandwiches. I've seen some frita burgers, which are amazing. So things like that. So where talk a little bit about kind of that evolution of like what made you decide to start doing that, and then maybe talk a little bit about that whole thing about kind of like I guess the start process because obviously reaching out to your first pop-up like tell me a little bit about that first pop-up experience like how you approach them or did they approach you or and kind of like how did all that kind of go about because I think that's something that I think people who are wanting to start something and maybe do a pop-up would kind of there those are all questions people always ask like well how did it go and how did you do it and how did you approach them and things like that.
Right. It's a bit of a tough question to answer, but I can just explain from my experience.
Yeah.
So I originally, when I did my first pop up, I reached out to the location that I did it at. A lot of the local bars around here, they're most likely going to be open because a lot of them don't have food. So one hand, washes the other or whatnot. My first pop-up, I was definitely in over my head. I really didn't have the processes in place like I should have, and um, yeah, after that, it was a pretty hectic night. It actually was a pretty decent night. It was a Saturday night, and it got pretty crazy pretty quick. But we made it happen, and you go home, you lick your wounds, you find out where you went wrong, and you try to install those processes to make that better. That's something that I've been doing the last couple of years, and I'm still trying to dial it in just right. But anyone that's interested into it, getting into it, I would definitely say start by taking pictures, creating promotional stuff like on an Instagram page level. Just get your name out there, show people what you're doing, what makes you special, what you enjoy doing, and just try to spread your message, and then go out there because there's times, every time you go out there, it's a gamble. You're not always going to guaranteed have customers. There's times I've went out there, I've made a decent amount of money one night. Then I've gone out there before and made no money one night. And you
Yeah.
still have that food, so you got to figure out what to do with that too. Otherwise, you're going to drop your food costs through the roof, and then it just becomes unprofitable. And you're just at this time of year killing yourself in the heat trying to make a buck.
Yeah, man, that's definitely a tough one. What do you, was there a point? Did you ever go the route of like when you would make stuff and you would actually like bring something so like the place could like the owner or like the place that you want to do a pop up like it can try your food, kind of be like, hey, listen, I'm trying to like is that something that you have done? Is that a common thing to do? I'm kind of curious because like obviously
Hmm.
I don't handle food, so I'm always kind of curious like how do you like kind of be able, besides showing great pictures, how else do people know about your food unless they try it, and especially if you're trying to
Right.
find new places. And I mean obviously a lot of it is word of mouth, I'm assuming, and like once you
Definitely.
start doing all those, you start going to other breweries and bars, then it's a lot easier for you to be able to kind of be like other places go, oh well, I also sell at these places, and then it's like, oh okay, well then cool.
Right. Yeah, kind of what you're saying. It's pretty much the way it is. So when I was first starting, before I did my first pop up, I was doing small kind of drop off catering things, nothing too big. People would order meat, I'd cook it on Friday night, bring it to them on Saturday once it's done. Same with the sandwiches. If they ordered it, I would press the sandwiches to bring it. I got to give a shout out to my mom and her friends there 'cause they're the ones that really helped me get going with that. So that helps get the word of mouth out. When I was first starting, there were a little bit less pop-ups. So usually back then it was a little bit easier to get in. It probably still isn't too bad now, but bringing food to let them try it, it's definitely not a bad idea. That the way they
Okay.
see what you're doing, what you got. I've been doing it for 2 years now, so I've got a little bit of a reputation. Most of the pop-ups, all those places I pop up, they know me. And yeah, I would say one big thing too is not being too fast to cancel on events too, man, because that kind of, I mean, it sucks. You never know. Florida weather is crazy. You could go out one day, it's going to say it's going, all hell's going to break loose, and then it's just sunny the entire day. And then some people end up canceling their pop-ups, and some of the places they're not big fans of that, which I can't blame them. They gave you the slot, and it's kind of hard to fill it the day of because prepping all this food takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would say my new motto has been just at least show up. If it's bad, it's raining, it is what it is. You can't do much about it.
No, I
But
think that's a good motto to have, is like basically that, and use each one as a learning experience.
hmm
And just kind of build from that, because you never know, like you also never know like who's going to be there and who's going to be the next person that's going to like maybe possibly take you to the next step, or be like, hey, I got a place too, why don't you come and eat, cook here, I need some catering and whatnot. Tell me a little bit about let's talk a little bit about some of the food. So let's talk about some of the sandwiches.
all right.
Tell people like kind of what you're bringing, because what I like about it is you don't give us, obviously it's a quick setup, so it's like you have a few options, but you don't have, it's not like you're not going to get menu anxiety, which I like. But at the same time, you're going to get, you dialed it down. You're like, I dialed it down, but I got like 3 or 4 good sandwiches, good choices. It just depends on your mood. So what are like some of the go-tos? I know you've added some new menu items, like the pastrami and the Reuben, the Cuban, and things like that, and the frita. So let's talk a little bit about some of the menu items that you have, like if someone were to come, and then kind of what inspired some of those things.
All right. So, like you were saying, I kept the menu small on purpose. That way, I can keep the ingredient levels at a higher quality. That was a big thing. I only have a couple coolers too, so you can only fit so much in there. But that was the definitely the get go. I didn't want people to sit there staring at a menu for a while. It's just a pop up. It's not a restaurant, you know. And I got a lot of different inspirations just from the ingredients alone from the Cuban. The Cuban's already got a decent amount in there that you can work with. The bread, obviously, is bread. You can make a ton of different sandwiches with it. Um, Mustard, pickles, those are always a good flavor combination, especially when you match that up with some ham. So having the smoked pulled pork, ham, the natural thing to come next was you got to have a pulled pork sandwich. Everybody loves pulled pork. Um, the other, well, that's the boar sandwich that I have on there before I forget
Oh
to
yeah.
omit that. The Monte Cubano that I created, that was just a bit of inspiration from the Monte Cristo. Had tons of smoked ham on hand. Why not? Why not make a Monte? Do it Cuban style. Press it. I put a little cheese crust on top of it to give it a nice little flair. And that's kind of how those were born. As of lately, like you said, I've been doing Reuben. I've been trying to expand a little bit. Every once in a while, this weekend and specifically, I'll have a little bit of brisket on hand, going back to those Texas style roots. Throw those on the Cuban sandwich. One of their flavor infinities out there is essentially pickles and onions. Those actually go really good when you're eating barbecue meat. It gets really rich at times, and it can be a little overwhelming on the palate. You bite into those pickles and onions, it's going to clear your palate and make everything nice again, so you can go right back into that meat.
I love it. I love it. And
And I,
and then is the pastrami smoked? Is the Reuben and the pastrami, are they smoked as well?
yes, sir. The pastrami I make myself. I go get a full brisket, trim it like I would a Texas style brisket, make it a little bit more aerodynamic, and then it gets thrown into the brine for about a week. Pull it out, wash it all off, clean it up, and then I put a special pastrami rub on there and smoke that up. It takes about a good 12 to 14 hours to get it to the right temperature, and pull it off, slice it up, keep it nice and thick. It's got tons of little specks of black pepper in there, so you get that nice little bit of that signature black pepper spiciness and the smoke to go with it. It comes up. It's been getting a lot better. When I first started it, it was a little too salty. Most of the recipes that I found are for corned beef, and corned beef you're gonna boil it. When you boil it, it's gonna absorb some of that salt out of there. That was a little bit of a problem the first time I did it. After that, I figured, hey, why not just take a little bit of that salt out? And after that, it was just all about getting the aromatics right.
I love it, dude. I love it. So I always like to ask people who are making sandwiches to let me know what would be your at-home sandwich making tip, that you think people are like, like a kind of like a quick little tip or a suggestion that people maybe to kind of help people maybe take their sandwich to the next level, or maybe something that they're not doing. Maybe it's a pet peeve of yours, something like that, where you can kind of think like, what's a good at-home sandwich making tip?
For this one, I'm assuming it's probably gonna be like for a quick, little snack. And since I do a lot of pressed breads, I would say we're gonna go with a grilled cheese, right?
Okay.
First thing I would do, first most important thing with bread and cooking in general, you gotta watch your heat. Medium might be just about right depending on how your stove is, but maybe a little medium low might be perfect because you don't, you want that cheese to melt just right, but you don't want to burn your bread before it does melt. Um, the other tip I would say too, a lot of people overlook on making those grilled cheeses. Throw some condiments in there, man. Some people sleep on like a little bit of pickle in there, a little bit of mustard, even just some barbecue sauce or some pickled red onions. People love that, and if you want to get real fancy with it, uh, work on dabble in the cheese crust, dude. Colby Jack cheese crust, just throw it on there, put it right on top of the bread, flip it right onto the skillet and just wait till you see the browning around the edges. Once you got that, your cheese crust should be fire.
I like it, dude. Those are some good ones. Those are some good ones. I like that. Where are you smoking where are you smoking your barbecue? Like how what's the setup kind of thing? Are you going, is it like doing stuff? I know obviously it's smoking takes like a lot of hours. So I'm assuming I'm like it's like on premise, like where you're at in order to be able to do it. Is that kind of
Yeah,
how you're working it?
yeah, essentially. So I have a commissary kitchen that I go to, and I have a little my smoker set out there. It's nothing too big. It's what do you consider kind of like a medium-sized ranged backyard pit. And most of the meat I do, well, not most of it, some of it is pretty short. Like when I smoke my hams or my bacons, that's only like 3, 4 hours, 5 hours at most. You want to speed it up a little bit, you could wrap it up in some tin foil and blast up the heat a tad bit more without burning it and without drying it out as well. But
Mhm.
the briskets, the big boys, um, right now it's kind of hard for me to do full 12 hour smokes like that.
I
I
was gonna
do them when
say.
I can, but I have a couple tricks behind that. You can smoke it for a good 6 to 8 hours. Throw it in your oven, usually in a pan. Don't wrap it up. If you wrap it up, you're gonna end up steaming your meat, and it ends up being just overcooked at times. That's good for pulled pork, but brisket not so much unless you want that extra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I when I cook my brisket, I want to be able to chop it, pick it up, and the piece not fall apart. You want it to pull apart, but with very minimal effort.
Yeah.
That's a properly cooked brisket. The rendered fat, something that can hold its form without, being cut as thick as your finger.
I like that. I like that. You're getting me hungry, by the way.
I
Um,
have to bring you some brisket, brother.
Oh, I'll eat any of your food, dude. You make some good stuff. So like, are you doing this currently right now full time?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I still work a full time job, 8 to 5. Get off.
Monday through Friday?
Yep.
And then, so
Yes,
basically
sir.
you're working all different types of hours, trying to between the trying to get the social media, trying to get the places locked in, and at the same time get everything prepped depending on the event.
Yes, sir.
So it's definitely one of those where it becomes quite difficult to kind of, and I know that struggle of like you trying to manage
The
um
burnout and
yeah, trying to manage all
yeah.
that. So let's talk a little bit about the burnout. What do you do to kind of fight that? Kind of help you through that process of not getting burnt out, which is that, or smoked out for all, for all that reason, if
Right.
you're,
I like the
since you're
pun there,
smoking
brother.
meats.
Um,
But what do you do to kind of help keep you even keel, or to kind of help you through those, the good and the bad times?
um, so there's times where I book up my schedule a little too much, and those times can get a little rough. I can usually push myself through it. But there are definitely times where it gets really bad, and that's where you just gotta kind of those next couple weeks book it a little bit less, give yourself some time to recuperate. Because actually, believe it or not, when I'm not out there doing it, I feel like I'm missing time. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes you gotta force yourself to take a day off or two as well. That helps me out during the week because sometimes you want to be ahead, but it doesn't really matter because you don't have to do it for another 4 or 5 days. Luckily, for me, you have a restaurant, you're gonna be on it
All
nonstop,
the time. Yeah.
but so luckily I still do have those days and my menu is still a little bit small. I can make pickles ahead of time. They're gonna last in the refrigerator for like a month or so. My sauces are pretty simple, pretty easy to make. You just throw them together like a night or two before to make sure that they're fresh and everything is, up to par. I don't want it sitting around too long. And then yeah, the meats, those ones are the ones that get a little rough at times because 12-hour cooks on a pulled pork, and then you have to take it out, pull it up, season it up a little bit again because you can season the outside of the pork, but you can't season
Yep.
the inside of the pork until it's done. But yeah, I mean, you do what you can. Don't forget to do the things you enjoy.
What are some things that you enjoy?
Um, I enjoy beer. I enjoy, well, right now football season's not in. I usually reel it back a little bit when football season's going on so I can enjoy time with the family or whatnot. And then December gets a little bit slow too. So those last couple weeks with
the
Christmas,
holidays.
and yeah, just really everybody's usually doing the family thing, so I don't really book anything around those times. And
Unless it's like a little catering action. If you wanted to cater, you wanted them to you wanted they want someone wanted you to cater some food. What
yeah, exactly.
who do you out of curiosity, who do you follow in football?
I'm a Cowboys fan, brother. I'm a
Okay.
Cowboys and a Gators fan.
I wanted to kind of get it a little bit. I thought you'd be a fun person to talk to just because, obviously you're dealing with like obviously I deal with the world of pop up, but I deal with the world of pop up during the weekends and stuff like that. For me, it's a lot easier in the sense that I pretty much tend to kind of shut it down in the summer just because it's one of those where I just feel like it's so the hot, the rain, it just does not help the situation. But in your particular case, like that's kind of the tough part because you want the pop-ups, and obviously the positive for you is you can do the pop-ups because it's not like you technically could do pop-ups inside. There's some places I've seen you where you've been able to pop up inside, other places I've seen you where you've had to pay, be outside during it, but at least everyone likes to go and drink beer during the, so it kind of does work hand in hand during that. And I know you've also done some food festivals, like where we have like, kind of like those food fair type things where you can go and do that. What are some things like, what do you look for when you're looking for like, are you scouting areas? Are you looking like to see when you're trying to find new places? Because obviously you want to have like your regular destinations where because obviously you got especially if you've got a good experience there, but what do you do like when you're like looking trying to find like a perfect example? I know one place you were originally doing pop-ups that I've eaten at, there one of those breweries is closing, so obviously that's like one location. So like what do you do to start like trying to figure out and find like how do I kind of get in to some of those spots and things like that?
Yeah, first things first, I have to say to my lips as people, I'm going to miss it. I went there for their last day and it was awesome, man. They had a big turnout. The place was packed. Even they opened up the back room where they brew all the beer and they had that filled up. It was a good time, man. I'm definitely gonna miss that place. But
That's when they first opened. That's how I remember it. I remember going through the back and actually hanging out and drinking beer in the back where they were brewing beer before they changed it to like everyone in the front. It obviously the location does not help, and that's kind of one big thing when it comes to like like the good and the bad of like probably affordability and things like that. But a location kind of can kill it as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, I wish the best of luck to them. I believe they're working on something, so definitely keep an eye out for them here in the future. I would love to see them return. They're really cool people, man. So it's gonna suck not seeing them for a little while, you know.
Yeah.
But going back to your questions, one easy way to definitely find out what places you can go to is just by following other pop-ups. See where they're heading out to, see where they're at, what events are going on. Sometimes when you get a little bit more well known too, you'll have people reach out to you to have you out. So that's definitely a way to make a little business. I mean, every time you go out, you always got to remember it's going to be a gamble. You might do well, you might not. So that first time you don't do well there, don't take it too personal. You might go back out again next time and the place is packed. So it's kind of just, monkey see, monkey do when it comes to finding places and then trial and error from there.
Yeah. No, I can see that. How do you balance I know for me it could be difficult, but for you it must be really hard to be able to do like how do you balance where you're able to use like the social media aspect where you're kind of trying to create content, but at the same time you're also, to kind of be able to show like, hey, this is like the food I'm creating, this is what I'm making. Because obviously when you're making sandwiches at an event, like that's where it's like fresh, you're making it. It's not like you're making it at home and doing all of this and then trying to create content and at the same time also serve people and try to get food out as quick as possible.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure out that balance myself, to be honest with you. The easiest way is to get somebody out to come out and take pictures for you, but that's not always the most financial prudent
Yeah.
way, I guess is the best way of explaining it. Because good photographers are not going to be cheap, and you don't know how much you're going to make that day. So the best thing I could say, and like I was saying, I got to balance it out myself. Every couple times, when you're at home, you have a little bit of extra food, just cook your same dishes, take pictures of it at home, post that onto your website and cross your fingers because as long as people are seeing it, it looks good. They're gonna come out and check it out. But it's definitely, I could say, I'm guessing there's gonna be a lot of consistency with it. You know?
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Consistency is always the hard part, especially when you're trying to do it and you're smoking. And I
Yeah,
mean, obviously people want to see that stuff. They want to see you smoking it up and being able to see the meats and so that
right.
everyone can kind of drool. So yeah, I
And
totally get that.
a lot of
It's
times
just
I'm doing it at night, so it's hard to get a decent picture of it. Having
correct.
lighting, a lot of that stuff is very key with photography. So
Yeah. No, I totally get that, man. I totally get it. It's a struggle. It's a struggle that I understand because sometimes you're in it and you're just doing you're just trying to get it done and you're like, "Oh, I forgot I got to do this." You almost have to
yeah,
have it in the back of your mind like all the time like I got to create content. I got to be able to do this. And that's always
especially on
kind of
the
the tough part.
pop-up on the fly because you're trying to get people's orders out as fast as you can, but it's taking pictures could slow you up a little bit. That's why I would suggest just getting a photographer, even if you have a girlfriend or a friend that's could take some decent pictures. Have them come out there, help you out. Take pictures, take a couple of videos, start editing it down, and come up with something that's consistent and that people like. At least
Are
that's what the
you
professionals say.
I've seen you a few times where it's been just you by yourself. I've seen other times when it's been you and your girlfriend and stuff like that. Like is it one of those like how are you like do you try to do it like try to make it where it's just you or most of the time is it how does that usually set up for you?
So this comes back to experience. Most places I've been there at least once or twice, and I can gauge the time and what date it's going to be to feel if I'm going to need help or not. So if I already expect there's going to be a big turnout, I try to have my girlfriend or one of my friends come to help me out. Just because you can't do everything at once, being a single man.
Yeah.
You know, can't be a single man band and rock the show.
No, no. I unless I totally can get that, man. That's always a tough one when it comes to that stuff. Well, let's talk about the good and the bad. So like what's been your favorite thing that's been happening since you've been doing this the last few years and what's been the hardest part of trying to do these pop-ups and everything that you're doing?
Um, it's a pretty multifaceted question. Um, the upsides for sure, meeting new people. That's always a positive. I'm usually kind of introverted, so it's cool to go out there and meet new people. I usually try to take care of the bartenders while I'm out there, hook them up with some food and stuff. So when I go out now, they usually give me a little discount. That's always cool. So that's one of definitely the highlights of it. The low lights sometimes is you could be sitting out there for hours and you might make a sale, you might not sometimes. Uh, the weather, like this past Monday, I was in Baldwin Park over there at Tactical, and the weather was nice the entire day. Right around 8 o'clock, the thunderstorm had other plans, and yeah, I got my tent broken that night for pretty quickly, man. So that's definitely one of the lower lights. But honestly, I wouldn't have any other way. So I enjoyed my time over there, even though that happened.
Okay. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I mean, you got to basically take the good and the bad with it, and it's all learning experience when you do it. So
Yeah, exactly.
I totally
Everybody
get that.
liked the food, and I got a lot of compliments that night. So I mean, that's what I look for. As long as people are having a good time, the 10's a 10. Let's buy another one for a couple $100. But
Yeah.
as long as business is good, people are enjoying stuff, and I'm having fun, I'm going to keep doing it. So,
So I have a kind of a question on the thought and see what your thoughts are on this. I've noticed. So when you go to like, okay, we'll just say regular, we'll go stay in the world of barbecue or just in food in general. When you go to a restaurant, you think of the food. You obviously think of the food and like, you go to the restaurant and you're not expecting to see the owner and all that stuff. But when you go to a pop-up or go to a food truck, or anything like that, or a food trailer, or anything like that, you obviously there's like, do you think, and I'm just kind of curious, especially if you do these things, but do you feel like that also plays a factor in how the food tastes, like how you feel about the owner, how that interaction was? Like, do you think that it kind of changes sometimes? Is like there's like almost perception wise, it's two different things. Like there's a little bit extra because now you got to be like, not only do I got to be good, and but I also have to have good food. But if I have bad service, even though it's just me, you know what I mean? Like it's as opposed to like at a restaurant where you're like, well, it's a restaurant, it's a chain or whatever. It's a restaurant. I don't know I'm not seeing the chef. I'm just eating his food. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of like a two-answer question, I feel like. Because going back to the pop-up, like you were saying, if people walk up and my tables are a mess, that's sending a bad message in general, even if the food tastes good. Or going back to the customer service side of it, if you're not showing that you care, you're not smiling, you're not showing people that they're welcome, that could turn somebody off as well. So I do totally agree with that. Energy definitely goes into food, as they say, cook with love, you're gonna make a good dish, essentially, right? Sure, somebody said it better, but
No, that's pretty good. No, I thought about that because I noticed that sometimes, like and as we're talking, that's kind of what hit me was the fact that I was like in my brain, I was thinking, I'm like, wow, I'm like, I do notice that sometimes that interaction with the owner when you have like when you're dealing with like a pop-up or just you're interacting, there's a certain level that makes you either a appreciate them that much more, makes you enjoy their food sometimes that much more than probably, and then which is probably a lot of times why I think I tend to gravitate more towards the small mom and pops, the small businesses where I'm seeing those because I get to have that interaction. So, which is like an extra thing. So it's a good and a bad, right? When you're kind of having it, because the positive is if they have a great interaction with you and they love your food, then there's like, they're like, oh my God, I love this guy. I want to support him. I want to help him. As opposed to like, if you go somewhere and like, and it's a restaurant and maybe like you're not seeing the owner and you're just having the food, then you're like, oh, well, the food's good or the food's usually good, but there's no connection. I think that's kind of what it is, the connection part of it.
definitely like going back to like I was saying, you have to show people that you care, whether that's just keeping your place clean or giving them your attention, saying hi, make them feel welcome, like I can't tell you some how many times I've seen like people when you don't greet them, they're not going to feel welcome and they end up just kind of walking off.
Yeah.
That's a lost sale right there. So just treat people the way you want to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
and just show them that you care. And that's whether that's keeping your place clean or just letting them know, giving them your attention.
Yeah. And I think also the fact that when people start like the other benefit is who better to sell your food than you, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of like the big thing. Like, especially if like when you, as you grow, you're going to want people who are passionate about what the food you're making and your guys are cooking, because that's one of the big ones. Like, there's nothing better than to hear someone like, oh my God, you gotta try the Cuban because like the way he does it and like he made the way he makes the pickles and the pickles how it goes with the meat and and like the mojo and all that stuff. Like you want that. You want like when you can see that when you talk to someone when someone asks you like, oh Derek, where what do you recommend? Like it's a lot different when you're the one talking about what you love. They can see that it like and that's the thing, like, and everything you do, whether it's the food, how you're talking about it, and all those things, I think all those things kind of permeate and people see that, and then like that's the energy that people want to have, because and then that's how they get a connection with you.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I do have one question for you though.
What's up?
When you have the sandwiches with the mojo, I always argue with my girlfriend about this one. She likes to pour it on the sandwich. I like to dunk it. What are you, a dunker or a pourer?
I do a mixture of both depending on where my bite is. So like depending on the bite, so initial bite, if it's on a diagonal, I'll do the dip. But then as I start
Right.
eating it, I don't, because it doesn't fit into the wherever my dipping thing is. So then that's when I do the pour. I do the pour so I get
I,
the bite and I do it that way. And
I
I
think I
always
got
try
your
to keep it,
signs.
so I kind of do like a mixture depending on what it is.
Sounds like science. So you let it pour in there to soak in a little bit, and
Yes.
then
And then that way with a bite, I get to have the mojo, like the sauce or whatever on the every bite.
got you.
Yeah.
Might have to steal that one from me, brother.
Or make a video. We'll
Give
make a
that one a
video of it.
shot.
We'll make a video of it.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
So Derek, I'm always kind of curious. Do, was there anyone who influenced you, like who's influenced you the most? And I know you talked about your abuela, but like who's influenced you the most when it comes to cooking? And then also did you have an influence on wanting to become like an entrepreneur or to have like your own business? Who were some of those influences?
All right. So growing up for sure, my grandmother, I would go to New Jersey as a kid a lot, and she would constantly cook. We rarely ate out back in those times. So she would make linguine with clams for me a lot. Up there in Jersey where she's at is farmland. So there's tons of fresh produce in the summer. Something I'll never forget. Just rows and rows of corn, fresh. You would know New Jersey
Garden
tomatoes.
State.
Yeah, baby. I'm not the big eggplant guy, but I hear they have some of the best eggplant in the world.
Yep.
But yeah, that's where I definitely first started the taste for food. I was a weird kid. I always like olives over cherries. I always like eating seafood. My grandmother will tell you she took me out to dinner one time, and she expected me to order off the kids menu, but I ended up ordering all you can eat crabs.
Nice.
And she didn't
Nice.
she didn't want to get it for me at first, but she said I'll get it for you if you ate it. And yeah, she definitely had a higher bill that night. But
That's good.
growing up more, I kind of got a little lost in the sauce, as a teenager and stuff like that. Early 20s, it's more about partying, just being a guy, drinking. But I knew that I needed to do something different. And that's where kind of my love for food started to come back in. Watching cooking shows, and then Netflix had a lot of great documentaries that came out from Chef's Table, and going back to the influences part, watching Sean Brock, that was a guy that really he really influenced me. I got to give credit to Gordon because everybody loves Gordon too.
Yeah.
I love watching him yell at people. I still do it every week. But um, yeah, guys like that, Sean Brock, Pitmasters. I mean, it's a little divisional nowadays with some of the younger guys, but you still got to give some respect to Franklin. He definitely put Texas barbecue on the map for sure, at least in recent times.
Yeah.
And then guys like Rodney Scott. I still got to go up there to South Carolina, man. They do. You might be interested in it. They do whole hog up there, man. Just like the island.
Where's South Carolina? I'm actually going to South Carolina next
Uh,
week.
he's got a spot in Charleston.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll definitely
What
be
part of Carolina are you going to?
we're going to Greenville, South Carolina.
Mm, nice.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah, dude.
Greenville, and I'll be in North Carolina for a little bit. We're just kind of doing like a family road trip, and most likely, well, it's not most likely. Whenever I road trip, the food's involved, so we're always looking for it. I'm actually going to be eating at one of the spots I'm going to be eating at is actually one of my previous guests, the Society Sandwich Bar. I'll be going to Greenville and hanging out with those guys. So I'm looking forward to eating their food and checking them out, especially since they've been on the podcast. And yeah, I just kind of want to. I always love sightseeing, just being able to see new
Right.
places, try the food, the culture, bring it all, soak it all in.
You're gonna have to stop at least 2 or 3 barbecue spots while you're up there.
Yes, and I'm perfectly
You
fine with
have
that.
to,
I'm perfectly
especially
fine with that.
the whole hog style up there. I think you're really gonna dig it, man. Because I
Yeah, man.
know, Cubans they get down to La Cajatina and all that. So
We do love a good cajachina. That is my family. Our favorite holiday is Nochebuena, and that's all we ever want is like the roast pork with the rice and black beans and the
right,
yuca. That is it right there. Like that's my favorite thing.
throw a little bit of mojo on there, and there you
Oh, for
go,
sure, you got to
bro.
have some
It's on the
mojo.
plate.
Yep, which is one of the good things about
Yeah.
that you make. You make a good mojo.
Thank you.
And I know that's always a good one. And I think you make a guava. Don't you make like a guava, like a kind of like a guayaba type sauce as well?
Mine's actually a Coca-Cola based barbecue sauce.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about dipping my toes into the guava barbecue sauce. I got a couple recipes I gotta play around with. So
If you do, there's a sandwich, and I'm gonna kind of put it in there. There's a sandwich, a Cuban sandwich that's called, and I may be right or wrong, but it's called Elena Ruiz.
oh
And
yeah, I
Elena
know
Ruz,
about it.
and it's the guava. It's like a guava type of and cream cheese and turkey,
The smoked
um,
turkey,
and the smoked
that'd
turkey,
be
and it's done.
fire.
It is done like on the Spanish. It's like the same bread that they use for medianoche, but you could still totally pull that off if you smoke some turkey and do that with like a guava and the cream cheese, and then do a little bit of
Right.
that when pressed. And the Swiss, they put a little Swiss cheese action on there.
I've never
um
really had that sandwich. I have to ask you though, is it a
yeah.
hot sandwich or is it a
No,
cold
it's
sandwich?
not a hot. Well, I believe it. I make it when I make it at home because I make it just because I want to like try my own version of it.
Right.
I believe it is a hot sandwich because it is, but I don't believe it's pressed. I just believe it's a hot
Mm,
sandwich, like the turkey's hot. but they do make it where there's cream cheese, guava, or a jelly. I think guayaba is the only way to go with it, but they do a strawberry jam, and cream cheese, and then the turkey with Swiss, is usually what it is.
Right. It sounds like I need to get in the lab here soon.
Yes. And if you do, let me know. I'll be more than happy to taste test for you.
Oh yeah, sounds good,
To
brother.
kind of work that route. No, man, I think this is great. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I really do appreciate and love when seeing what you're doing. The fact that it is, I know a lot of people have their version of like a Cuban sandwich, but but I love when I see other people that tell me, they're like, dude, his Cuban's really good because he's got like that mojo is on as fire, and you put it in with the pork and the meat, and you do a really good job on it. And that's one of the things I appreciate, is the fact that you can tell when you're making your sandwiches, you there's a love for it. And I think people taste that when you have a passion for something.
Yeah,
um
definitely, brother. I'm pretty competitive, so when I get into something, I want to be the best, man. So
that's good.
that was kind of one of the goals I had. Just want to make the best Cuban.
So speaking of goals, what's the long, like, you've been doing this now for a few years, you're kind of
Mhm.
you're building up that notoriety, you're building up, what's the goal? Like, is the goal to be able to have like do you have an idea of what you want to have in the next 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, definitely. The next step is definitely working on getting a food trailer. I kind of like to ride the waves, like kind of going back to what you were just saying, but that's the main goal to start. I would like to, in the end game, open up a restaurant, and if that becomes successful, open a couple different concepts. There's a couple things around town that have always stuck with me. So I do have aspirations. I would definitely like to open like either a small gastropub type sports bar thing where you can go in there and watch the game, get some good drinks, some fresh local beer. But yeah, I mean, until then, I'm working on getting that food trailer, just being consistent, becoming a better businessman, a better chef, and just learning as much as I can, man. Meeting people like this and getting out of my comfort zone like this in particular, because sure, some people could tell I'm a little introverted. So um, s- getting out here, doing this is definitely giving me some experience to become a better speaker.
Oh, I think you're doing great, man. You're doing absolutely great. I definitely appreciate it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have a chance to chat with you, because I really do love what you're doing, and I just basically thought this would be a great way for me to be able to introduce some other folks, so that if they see it, if they're following you. With that being said, how can people follow you? How can people, try your food? What's the best way for them to be able to kind of like seek you out, so they can try some Bien Fuegos barbecue?
All right, so right now I'm at Bien Fuegos underscore barbecue on Instagram. That's the main one I'm messing with. I do have a Facebook that I've been neglecting for a couple years now, and I'll be working on that very soon. And yeah, all my schedules usually get posted on there. Um, I usually do something at least once a week, and if I'm not, I usually try to at least post to let people know, like, hey, I took the weekend off, just gonna relax. So that's definitely the best way of finding me.
Yeah, usually on your feed, you usually have a pretty good job at putting in what your schedule is, and what you're looking at and stuff like that. Um, I'm kind of curious, because you said, obviously, I know competitive, because obviously you want to strive for the best, and things like that. But there is a lot of barbecue, obviously, in Central Florida. How
Hmm.
What is that called? Like, and I don't know how it is, because obviously, like, I eat different ones, and there's different styles of barbecue. So like that's the other thing that kind of comes with it. But I'm kind of curious. Um, what is the culture like, or the barbecue community? Is it like would you say it's a pretty like inclusive, like everyone's kind of like, we kind of you guys kind of, have a good rapport, a majority of you? Is it one of those, like, I'm just kind of curious, like, what that community is like, the barbecue community is like in Central Florida?
Barbecue community that I've dealt with around here, they're all awesome, dude.
Okay.
Tyler from Smoke Made, Chester from over there at Follow the Smoke, and my friend Brock from Brock's Barbecue. Those guys are always awesome. Every time I'm at an event, I could talk to them. We could, speak from our experiences. If I have a question, they never hesitate to ever answer a question. That's one thing I definitely enjoy about it. Like everybody's very open. I mean, that's kind of the way barbecue's supposed to be, though. I mean, I'm sure they could be a little competitive too, because you always want to have the best brisket, you want to have the
Yeah.
best banana pudding or whatnot. So, but they're all good people, man. They're all really good people. They always, I feel like, welcome me with open arms, bro. Every time I'm out there. So,
I like hearing that. I'm always kind of curious how that is because I know like some of the culinary world can be pretty competitive, and they
hmm
can kind of get a little, there could be a little, little things can kind of trigger here and there, and and
yeah,
maybe like I'm not going to talk to this person. I'm not telling him this secret, or he took my thing. Like if you're, especially when you guys are creating, because I mean, you guys are at the end of the day, you're smoking meats or you're creating barbecue, so there's going to be some like crossover or crossover onto like what you guys are all doing. It just
yeah,
depends on how you
definitely.
guys do it. So yeah.
Like you're saying, though, there's different styles of barbecue. I mean, just in the South of America alone, I mean, you have North Carolina has its own style, South Carolina has its own style. I might be mistaken, but I believe it's North Carolina. The west side of the state cooks barbecue about the same as this east side of it, but they have totally different sauces, so you're gonna get different flavors from each side of it. Um, Alabama, believe it or not, has their own style of barbecue.
Hmm.
Texas is a big one. Kansas City's a big one. People don't think about it, but Kentucky even has their own style of barbecue, which is like really big on mutton, which a lot of people don't eat that stuff, dude.
What's mutton?
Sheep.
Oh.
Yeah, they do barbecue sheep over there. They have a Worcestershire based barbecue sauce.
Oh wow. Have you been
Yeah.
playing around with like different styles of like I know you make like your own sauces, but like have you been playing around like is there something that you've been kind of playing with that maybe hasn't been released yet, but you're trying to like perfect to kind of add as like your own kind of like your Bien Fuego sauce?
It wasn't a sauce yet. The thing I was toying with earlier, I think you saw it earlier this week or last week, was the Maduro pudding.
I did see that. I did see that, and I
It
like
came
that.
out
I
pretty
like
good.
I like when people try different things, having some of that, doing something that kind of like, oh, I never thought about using this, and I think that's the part that I enjoy when because, like, I do see like that's why I have no problem when people ask me because being Cuban, people ask me like, well, is that a Cuban? And I was like, well, you can have like you can be influenced by a Cuban and still make a good Cuban sandwich or make a version
Right.
of a Cuban sandwich based on the influences of what the foundations of it is. And to me, delicious is delicious. I don't really, I don't want to. I've done a Cuban sandwich competition and they all taste the same. And so I like having a variety of different flavors. If you start eating the same thing over and over again, I like
Right.
having different variations of things.
As long as they don't put too many vegetables on there. Key note,
Yeah.
guys. No vegetables on, not too many on a Cuban, dude.
Yeah, no. The only thing that's green on that is a pickle.
Pickle, yep.
There's not much else there. So yeah, man, for sure. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on. I look forward to sharing and for folks being able to see this. By all means, that's our show for today. Thank you so much to Derek Pierson of Bien Fuegos BBQ for coming on and during my lunch break. I definitely appreciate it. I've enjoyed if you've enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe, tell your friends. If it sounds delicious and you kind of look at the Instagram and you're like, oh, that looks good, by all means, definitely make sure to go try them. Support those local pop-ups. They're definitely making some good food, and he's definitely putting in the time and effort into it for you to be able to enjoy. If you do it, I want to see a picture. I want to see some selfies. I want to see you tag them. Definitely help spread the word, man. That's kind of the whole purpose of this whole thing. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Tell your friends, obviously shop for your friends, buy yourself, treat yourself, whatever it is. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.